We're happy to welcome BGR members and all of our guests to this morning's event. BGR is a nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy research firm dedicated to inform public policy making and the effective use of public resources. Our primary public service consists of policy reports that tackle high-leverage issues and identify opportunities and solutions for significant improvement in local government. We also monitor more than 70 government entities across Jefferson, Orleans, and St. Tammany parishes. BGR's goal is the improvement of government in the greater New Orleans area. Breakfast briefings further BGR's mission by allowing citizens and policymakers to discuss issues that affect all of our lives. We hope you'll take advantage of the question and answer portion of today's program. After Dr. Brumley's remarks, you'll see the simple instructions on your table how to use the Slido app. We also have some paper there if you'd like to write your question out, and please include your name if you'd like to be identified. We also welcome ideas for future breakfast briefing topics. This is the second one of the year, and we'll have 2 or 3 more this year, so please provide us your suggestions and leave those cards on the table or give them to me afterwards, and we'll be happy to consider them. The best way to stay on top of all of BGR events and research is to become a member. Last year, we reaffirmed our status as a member-based organization and put plans in motion to regularly engage with our members about our public policy work. This year, we continue to deliver member benefits that enable an enhanced dialogue between BGR and its members. Our members are an essential tool for amplifying BGR's good government recommendations. So if you're not currently a member, I would ask that you please consider to join the ranks of concerned citizens working to improve local government, and join soon. And now, to introduce our topic this morning is Dennis Woltering. You all know Dennis as WWL-TV's former anchor. He continues to serve our community and is an active member of BGR's board. Dennis, please come on up. Thank you, Dennis.
Good morning. Thank you, Hunter. I'd like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to Iberia Bank for its generous sponsorship of BGR's breakfast series for 2018. Their support allows BGR to make these events free to the public. I'd also like to acknowledge BGR's president and CEO, Amy Levinsky, and BGR staff. They do a fantastic job of planning and executing these quarterly events. The Jefferson Parish Public School System is Louisiana's largest, with nearly 50,000 students in more than 80 schools. It has a general fund budget of $470 million. It also faces major challenges. The system's academic performance has stagnated. As a whole, the system achieved a C rating for the past 2 years. This reflects a portfolio of schools that include nearly 3 dozen A and B schools, but also nearly 2 dozen D and F schools. Its high school graduation rate is 72%. That is well below the state and national averages. In addition, Jefferson faces competition for talented employees from other school districts and charter schools in Southeast Louisiana. The competition is especially acute when it comes to attracting and retaining new and early career teachers. Jefferson's entry-level pay lags behind what other districts and charter schools can offer. Last fall, the school board failed to win voter confidence with its proposed property tax for pay raises for all school system employees. Another challenge is that many Jefferson Parish students and educators spend their days in outmoded and aging school buildings. Most of the school system's buildings are at least 30 years old, and they cannot easily be renovated to address new technology and learning environments. A long-awaited school facilities master plan remains a work in progress. In the context of those significant challenges, the Jefferson Parish School Board voted unanimously this past March to hire Dr. Cade Brumley as Jefferson's new superintendent. Dr. Brumley earned his Master of Education degree from LSU Shreveport and his Doctor of Education from Stephen F. Austin State University in Texas. He worked in Caddo and Sabine Parish schools before coming to DeSoto Parish, a system of 5,000 students. Dr. Brumley became superintendent of the DeSoto school system in 2012 and led it to dramatic improvements. Once a struggling district, DeSoto has scored an A on its state report card for the past 2 years. It has also improved ACT scores, special education services, and academic outcomes for minority students. Although the move from DeSoto to Jefferson is a major leap in size and scale, Dr. Brumley has eagerly taken the reins in Jefferson and is here today to discuss his plans. Thank you for joining us this morning, Dr. Brumley. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I am so super excited to be here today, super excited to be in this space of work in Jefferson Parish, and I hope that so many of you are as excited as I am that I am here and part of the work with you. Thank you for being here this morning. I hope you enjoyed the speech. All right, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, but wake up, people. All right, so I have given parts of this stump speech over the past 66 days, and today makes day 67. And people say, why are you not coming out automatically with all these plans to make changes in the system? And what I know is people who walk in and on day one make tremendous changes to a system often fail. So I've spent so much time out in the community talking with people such as parents, teachers, students, so that I can get a better sense of why behind the data numbers that were shared with you earlier, and I'll share some of these with you again in a moment. So I'll share with you my 100-day entry plan, and I hope that in 30 or so days that you'll be prepared to also hear the findings of that report whenever we issue those. But the strategies of the 100-day plan, and you should have a copy of that in front of you, to build positive relationships with students, employees, and families, review and analyze student data, ensure our schools are safe learning environments for all students, working to make our educators' salaries more competitive, learning about the district's office's support to schools, students, leaders, and teachers, building positive working relationships with the school board, community leaders, and key partners, develop a deeper understanding of the unique Jefferson Parish facility needs, and ensuring a successful start to the 2018-2019 school year. Guys, for a very long time, I've known that I wanted to be an educator. Since elementary school, I've known that this is the work that I wanted to do. And so I've spent my entire college career and professional career trying to be the absolute best that I can be in this space for the kids. You know, some people have political motives, some people have personal agendas, and I understand that that's the world that we live in. Someone asked me yesterday when we were going through a strategy session, if you had a superpower, what would it be? And I said my superpower would just simply be to make people believe that my only goal in this work is greater outcomes for kids. That is my only goal. That is the only thing that I want to make sure that we do. And I wish that I could make everyone else have that same goal with me. Now, does that mean that nothing else matters? No, absolutely not. We have to value our workers. We have to make sure that our employees feel valued. They have a place to grow professionally. You know, they have value through their compensation structure. We have to make sure that our parents are part of the process. You know, we have to work with community leaders because these kids are going to leave our schools and go into jobs, and they have to be prepared. And so all of these other things matter, but for me every day, beyond every bit of that, is the fact that I have to do better for 50,000 kids in this parish. And this is the most important work in the state of Louisiana. This is the most important work, so I want to thank you for being a partner in this, because I'm telling you, as a superintendent, former superintendent of DeSoto, as an assistant superintendent principal, having been involved with several things at the national level, serving as the president currently of Louisiana Association of School Superintendents, I'm telling you, for what that's worth, this is the most important work in the state of Louisiana, and I'm thankful that you, in whatever way that you can contribute, want to be a part of that. So, by the numbers, Jefferson Parish Public School by the numbers. So right now the system holds a letter grade of C with a district performance score of 78.9. That's on a 150-point scale. You can see in 2014 that letter grade was a B, 87.7, then went to 79.4 and 78.9. So top out there in 2014, 2015 at 87.7, currently 78.9. by the numbers, let me jump here. So I wanted to show some budget information, our system in terms of the budget. So we have about 290 million local dollars, about 221 million state dollars, and about 77 million federal dollars. The budget, guys, is simply an expression of your values as a system. So where you place your money shows the things that you think are important. And so for me to have the change that our kids deserve, that our communities deserve, we have to make sure that we use the budget to leverage those changes. I want to make you aware right now, too, in terms of district performance scoring, that the grading system will get harder, will get more rigorous. So it will become increasingly difficult to score even the 78 or 79 where the system currently stands, because the way that schools are graded has gotten more difficult. And we'll talk more about that in the future. But for example, in my former district, where we had a district performance score of 103, which was an A, if we take those same results that earned the 103A and we move it to the new scale that is coming out, that's been approved by the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, that drops about 10 to 15 points. And so I'm not suggesting that that is good or bad. I'm just suggesting that we need to be aware that that shift is coming. And so what it will do is it will form a new baseline for us for where we start moving forward. I'm trying to not get too far in the weeds with all of this, and am very aware of my time. But on average, if you look at the bluish-green bar, on average, elementary and middle schools will need to improve 5.4 points in the first year, 7.7 points by the second year, and 10 points by 2025 to maintain the letter grade that they have now. So that can get wonky, and we can talk about that individually, but just know that systems have to have tremendous growth even to maintain what they presently have as we move forward. That was elementary. I went through all the things. So, all right, so by the numbers, we have about 50,000 kids. 40% of those are African American, 26% of those are Hispanic on the left. Now, if you look to the right, that is more important in terms of the challenge, because right now our system educates 81% of our students are economically disadvantaged. And so that is a real challenge. We have 74% of our students, if you add some of the numbers on the left, are students of color. I want you to know, obviously, this is the largest system in Louisiana, and it's the 98th largest system in the United States. I don't know if you realize that, but we are a top 100 system in terms of size in the nation. 77 of our schools have ESL programs. Total enrollment's right under 50,000. 15.1 English language learners, 27.2 Hispanic. You know, we've gone through some of these. Schools with the highest enrollment of students that are English language learners, Grace King High School, 455. So for instance, I was having a visit with a social studies teacher at Grace King the other day, and we're having a conversation. He says, I don't think people realize I have 7 different primary languages in my classroom. And so think about that if you're a teacher and you're responsible for the academic results of those kids, and the primary languages in your classroom, there are 7, and 6 of those aren't English. And that is a challenge, especially if professional development hasn't been provided comprehensively so that our educators know how to best educate students when they're not coming to the classroom with English as a primary language. I find this statistic especially interesting when we're talking about students that do not have English as a primary language. In 2008-9, there were about 3,700 kids in Jefferson Parish that did not have English as the primary language, and we'll enter our next school year with that number over 8,000. You know, that is a tremendous impact, and furthermore, in terms of budget, that takes money. That takes money to reach multiple languages in the classroom, in the community, to provide the additional supports that are necessary, because that number continues to grow. And furthermore, you know, I think that we have not done a good job as a system of embracing the fact that this is who we are. You know, it should not be like, this is Jefferson, and then we have this other group of students who do not have English as a primary language. We have to say, this is who we are, And we need to spend the next school year, and this is what I plan to do, working with board, working with leadership in this area to figure out, like, how do we develop comprehensive strategy behind this work and not just piece things together, but really take ownership for this and be a proof point in the nation of what can be possible. Part of the reason I say the work in Jefferson is the most important work is because of this. There are not places really in the nation that are doing this exceptionally well, and we can be that place. You know, whenever I was interviewing for the job, the question was asked of me, what's your vision for the system? You know, and people in the community would ask, what's your vision for the system? And, you know, I would say with no disrespect, but that's the wrong question. The right question is, how do we get to the vision? How do we determine the vision? And then how do we get there? And so this is part of the getting there process. All of the data that I've been reviewing, and it's tremendous. All of the conversations that I've had, all of the community meetings I've had in the morning, the faculty meetings, the town halls in the evening, those have informed me on what our vision needs to be, what our strategy needs to be, how we need to actually get there to do better for the 50,000 kids. And I am so optimistic. I am just so incredibly optimistic that we can do that, and we will do that. We have to have strategy behind what we're doing. We can't just say the buses are going to come to school today. Let's do the best we can. No, we have to say the buses are coming to school today, and these are the things we're going to do to make sure that outcomes are better for kids. And we have to honor the people doing that work through that process. And we will do it, and we will make results better. So this is of concern. So children deserve the absolute best teacher that they can have in front of them. Teachers deserve the absolute best leaders that they can have in front of them. So we have to make sure that we have investment in our workforce to make sure that we're able to recruit and then retain the best quality workforce that we can have. Because the rubber meets the road in the classroom with our teachers for our kids. You know, it may not sound like much to you, and it really wasn't, but I spent a day as a substitute teacher at East Jefferson. I taught civics for the day. And it reinforced the conversation that I have with a friend of mine from time to time, and that is a conversation we have about what's the hardest job in America. And he says the hardest job in America is to be a teacher. And I say, you're wrong. That's not the hardest job in America. I said the hardest job in America is to be an effective teacher, because we can give anyone a set of keys. We can say, there's your desk. But for you to go in and build relationships with kids, for you to go in and build relationships with families, for you to deliver content well, and do that from 8 in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon in that classroom, and then do all the other things that you have to do to be effective, that is the hardest job in America. And whenever I spent my time at East Jefferson teaching a subject area that I'm actually certified to teach, that was reinforced to me. This is incredibly hard. I would encourage you, if you don't get that, or if you don't appreciate that, let me help you. You know, contact us. We'd love for you, if you're clear and you're able, to come spend a day and helping in our classrooms. It is hard, and we've got to value those people doing that work. So in order to do that, we've got to make sure that, 1, our teachers have strong leadership in front of them. 2, they have a place where their voices can be heard and they can grow as professionals. And 3, they need a compensation package that makes sense for them. 21st century compensation package that makes sense for them. And so there was talk about the millage that did not pass last time. People always like to tell me the rationale why they think that didn't pass. And someone will say this, and another person will say this. And I'll say, no, you're all wrong. The reason it didn't pass, it didn't have enough votes. Okay? And so if you're going to put a millage out, you have to have a reason for putting it out, and it has to be something that actually makes sense. That people who voted no last time will be able to say, you know what, that makes sense. I get that. We need to do that for our teachers. We need to do that for our kids. And so as we internally scrub the budget over the next, few months to year, we have to look at where are inefficiencies in the current system. Are there inefficiencies in the current budget? And if they are, can we rededicate that to, number one, our strategies, but this teacher pay issue? And then if it's not there, then what do we need to do in terms of a millage? But whatever plan we put forward, and if I have my face on a plan, I want it to make sense. I want it to be responsive to what our market says we need to be doing to make sure that we have the right people in front of our kids. And it's scary, guys, because right now, 4 out of every first-year teachers in Jefferson Parish leave after the first year. So we hire 10 people. We invest in them. You know, whatever level of investment that has been, I don't know. I think we have to do a lot of work around that too, and we will. But after a year, 4 of them leave. So that is not good. Everyone, year 2 and beyond, 3 of 10 leave. So they're retiring, they're going to a neighboring parish for better pay, they're going to a neighboring parish where they have stronger leadership. I don't know. They're going to charter in another parish. I don't know. But the fact is this is happening, and so we have to make sure we have stronger leadership. We have to make sure their voices are heard, and 3, compensation that makes sense. So here are some numbers in terms of state testing. So right now, students who are scoring at the mastery level or above on LEAP assessment in grades 3 through 8, we have about 29% of our students who, whenever they take that test, they score at mastery level or above, meaning they've mastered the content. The state average is 31. And so that's LEAP on the top, and on the bottom is EOC, which are high school end-of-course assessments. Jefferson Parish has about 57% good or above, and the state rate is 61. So, you know, obviously I want to be better than average, so we've got some work to do there, and we've got to make sure that we're pulling the right levers to make sure that happens. One of the big things that I found in my community, I mean my school visits, I was visiting a school, one of the schools where I spent time, and it was a school that was, I believe, kindergarten through 5th grade. And having conversations with the teacher, having conversations with the leadership, and they said, you know, of the kids that started with us in kindergarten, and they have multiple sections at each grade, you know, the kids that started with us in kindergarten, we only have 5 of those kids left as 5th graders. That's incredible, guys. That speaks to the transient population in our parish. And the reason I bring that up is because that as I would travel early on in my first 10 to 15 days maybe, I found that whenever I would go from school to school, those people in those schools had completely different resources. And so there was no way that the district could effectively develop or train or support teachers when you have 7,000 people doing completely different things. And so, especially given the transient population, we had to standardize curriculum. And I want to applaud our board because I brought forward to them an approach or a recommendation to move to the highest level of curriculum for our kids, and they approved that. And so now across the district next year, all of our schools will have a shared curriculum. And so that will allow us to focus our resource on developing in that curriculum. And also it's helpful because it aligns with the state assessment at the end of the year. So a lot of the things that teachers were using throughout the course of the year did not match for the kid with what they would be assessed on at the end of the year. That also matters because teachers' evaluation, which depends on that result, if they're not teaching what the assessment says at the end of the year, it puts them at a disadvantage. It was the equivalent of, I'll put it like this, it was the equivalent of us practicing our sports team all year in basketball, and then they show up for the game, and the game is baseball. And so that's what we had to correct, and we've corrected that. And so now we have to provide the support to make those things happen. Graduation rate, 78.1%. That's about a 3-point drop from the year before. I just find it appalling. People don't like when I say it. Some people have told me, don't say that. Let's talk about this or that. Don't talk. No, we're going to talk about that. That is not acceptable to me. If you're a Hispanic child and you start in 9th grade in Jefferson Parish, we can walk to that parent right now and we can say, in 4 years, we can tell you that we give you about a 30% chance to graduate. Because 3 out of 10 will walk across the stage 4 years later. It's not acceptable. 78 is not acceptable. 71.8 is not acceptable. And I think I know some things we can do to make that better. And I want us to call it out and name it and say it's not good. And let's do something about it. So I'm not going to go through these strategies of what I've been doing in my first 100 days. I've only got a couple of minutes left, so I want to run through some stuff here. Some early commitments I made. One is a transformation zone to provide extra support and resources for our highest need schools as part of an equity agenda. It takes more for some kids to get to the same place. You know, those of you who employ people, you know, it takes more for some employees to get to the same place. And we have to know that that's real, and we have to address it. I want to have a student advisory council to inform me on student perspectives. Spend a day, I know I've only got a couple minutes left, but I spend a day with the middle schooler on one of our campuses, trying to experience what does it feel like to be a middle schooler in Jefferson Parish Public Schools. And so I went through the day, a little awkward, but I went through the day, and at the end of the day, I'm like, look, I call him Corey. I said, look, Corey, tell me about your family. Tell me where you live. He's like, well, I live with my older sister, and I've got a younger sister, and then my niece and my nephew, he's 12. My niece and my nephew live with us too. And that's his home. You know, that's his home. I'm not sure how much the general public realize that's Corey coming to school every day, you know, and we have 25,000 Coreys, you know, or more. This is incredibly hard work. And we have got to make sure we have the strategies in place to do it correctly. We've got to make sure we have the talent to do it. And we got to be committed overall to the work. So also an educators compensation working group, that was an early commitment. That group is meeting. I'm not interfering with their work, but I have shared some things that I think are important to me in a more effective compensation package. A graduate profile to inform specific skills and competencies students should know when they graduate. So for instance, we need to know when a child graduates from a Jefferson Parish Public School, as a community, what do we expect them to know and be able to do? Where are the jobs? You know, what do we need to do then to get them to this point? So how do we backwards design? How do we say, okay, next year, the third graders for next year, you are our class of 2026, and in 2026, we need to make sure that you're ready to do these things. And that's how we have to think backwards to get there. And an external review of our budget that's taking place to determine where there are inefficiencies. Because the big rocks that we need to accomplish, those big rocks take money, and we have to be able to make sure that the money is there to do those things. And so I think that school systems for too long have taken a backwards approach to this, and school systems have said, this is the money we have, what do we do with it? And my approach has always been, as a superintendent, and timing is a little bad for us right now, but my approach has always been, you take January, February, and the first half of March, and you say, what are we trying to accomplish? And then you take March, April, and May and say, here's how we take the money that we have and make sure we're accomplishing those things. And then you track the progress, and you hold people accountable for the progress, and you move the system. So those are some early commitments that I have. I know we're going to take questions, so I'll just close this brief, first comments by just again thanking you. And if I can do anything to reinforce the importance of this work, and if I haven't done it this morning, let me know, because I want to have more conversations with you. But I always like to throw this plug in. The greatest challenge that we have as a generation, educationally, has to do with kids that aren't even in our school system. The greatest challenge that we have are the kids that aren't to the system yet, birth to 4. If you're a child and you're born in a home that is impoverished, you will hear about 30 million less words before you start kindergarten as opposed to a child in a middle-class home. Think about the advantage that middle-class child has over that child born in poverty, having heard 30 million more words. Well over half the kids that we receive to us in kindergarten and public schools are not kindergarten ready. In some communities, that number's up in the 90s. That means they don't know blue from green. That means they can't count to 10. That means they don't know their real name in many cases. They know their nickname. And until we realize this is not just a K-12 issue, but this is a community issue, this is a regional issue, a state issue, and a national issue, we can be as strong as we want to be between 8 and 3, and we will make it better for kids, but our communities will not fundamentally transform until we take ownership for that piece. That's the greatest challenge we have educationally, and it's before they even get to us. So thank you. I look forward to your questions.
First of all, the DeSoto Parish School System demonstrated tremendous improvement under your leadership. Could you discuss some of the changes that you believe were responsible for its improvement and how such changes could be applied to the Jefferson Parish School System?
Yeah, so, I got knocked several times because I was from a smaller district. How can a superintendent lead Jefferson if they've never led Jefferson? Here's something that matters. If you're in a large system, sometimes you go through the ranks and you'll have content knowledge, you'll have institutional knowledge, but you may find yourself in one particular area of work, one particular space. So in DeSoto, there was not a director's job, whether it was human resource or business or academics or operations, student services, that if they stepped away, like I could step in and do that work. So whenever it comes to system leadership, I was not in this one space of work where I spent a career. I had to lead an entire system and understand everyone's role to be able to do that work. I was asked by a second grader, one of my visits, Petrie Elementary, I was asked by a second grader, you're a young superintendent, what's an advantage of that? And I'm like, well, that's a setup question. Who gave you that? And so after I stumbled around on that for what seemed like 5 minutes, I came up with the answer that I think matters because I was reflecting and I think it matters. I have school-age kids, so I'm a dad. Whenever people talk about over-testing or why is this or why is that, my kids are coming home and telling me the same thing. So as a principal and as a superintendent, I've always approached every classroom as would I want my own personal child in this environment? And if the answer is no, then I have a responsibility to do something about it. And so I think that's an advantage of being a young superintendent. But he asked about DeSoto, how we got the results. The most incredible thing about DeSoto and the results, we were, in 2010, we were 49th in the state for academic achievement of the 70 systems in Louisiana. And when results came in last year, we were 9th. We broke into the top 10. 70% economically disadvantaged. But the most tremendous thing about the DeSoto run, from the time I started my superintendency until the time I ended, we had a 40% reduction in revenue. So think about that. Okay, that's like your revenue got cut in half, and we did that. Why did we do that? And we never rolled up millages. We never did those things. We always said, this is what we have. How do we get tighter? How do we focus? How do we narrow the scope of our work to the things that really matter? And let's be the best in the world at it. And I guarantee if you go throughout this state and even parts of the nation, because people come up to me and tell me, and all the time we're hosting trips, people say, if you want to see that, go to DeSoto. Go look at that in DeSoto. We were 50%, about 50-50, black and white. We were about 70% economically disadvantaged. Everybody got on the same train around these same things. Board supported it. Board kept the main thing the main thing. They weren't fighting political and personal agendas. They thought about kids, and we got there. And that was so exciting. But why? Strategy and talent. Not my talent, but the ability to get the right people to do the right work.
Member of the audience asks, what is your plan to bring Jefferson Parish Public Schools into compliance with state and federal special education laws? Jefferson Parish is famous for not being in compliance.
Yeah, actually I have some experience there too. Whenever I was superintendent in DeSoto, we were under a corrective action plan, and we worked our way out of that. We actually reinvented special education programming in our system, and I think that's good because under the federal law, ESSA, special ed results will be illuminated like never before, and they should be. We should be doing better by our special education students. As I had community visits, as I had visits with faculty members, as I've had conversations with advocates, many of you are in the room, this was a pattern. I mean, this was something that continued to come up and up. Special education. Special education. We need to do something different in special education. And even talking to special education teachers, we haven't had training. We haven't had a meeting in 2 years. We haven't had, so it's really not trying to jump off the hook with this, but we have to really figure out what is the problem. We have to engage with some of the people I've already talked to figure out what their complications have been. We have to realize that special education teachers need a different type of training than regular education teachers. And that was one of the things that we figured out in DeSoto was too often we would just throw our special education teachers in with, oh, you like math? Go train with math. Well, that's ridiculous. They have a very specific work that they have to be doing, and we have to make sure that we're providing the training for that. But there's a lot that has to be done there, and I would need another 30 minutes. But I am aware, and I do want to make it better. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Mental health is not addressed in the 100-day plan. What is your plan to address the increasingly alarming and unrelated and untreated mental health issues in our students?
First of all, as a point of clarity, the 100-day entry plan is not a plan of what I'm going to do to make the system stronger. The 100-day entry plan is figuring out what needs to be done to make the system stronger. I've always tried to clarify that. And look, that's not going to happen overnight. I mean, 50,000 kids and 7,000 or so employees, and it's a big ship, but we'll start turning it. I have said consistently, we're in a mental health crisis in America. I think so much of it stems from the breakdown of the family unit at the home, and I'm not suggesting what that family unit looks like. I'm only suggesting that families are best served when they have a supporting, caring environment of expectation and shared accountability, and we don't have that in our society. Mental health is a crisis. We also have opioid crisis. I was able to sit in on a meeting yesterday with Senator Cassidy and some other regional leaders about how we could combine our efforts to address the opioid issues that we're facing. We will never be able, mental health, we will never be able to afford enough counselors and social workers to go into the schools. We'll never be able to afford that. What we have to do is realize that we can't be territorial with the kids. We can't be territorial with the families. We have to say, if we have some external providers that can help support this work at no cost to the system, and the parent or whoever the guardian is responsible for the child wants that support, we have to say, in my opinion, you know, the door is open, come help us in the work, because we'll never be able to afford that. And the challenges are so tremendous. So I think for me moving forward, one of my priorities will be increasing partnerships with external agencies in that space, licensed counselors, licensed social workers, master's level social workers, and agencies in that mental health space so that we can get more supports. The other part is I think we have to work with community and civic organizations on mentor programs. So many of our children do not have a mentor in their life, a role model. And so that was an area where in the past I've been able to have some luck in reaching out to faith-based and civic organizations to identify kids who needed to see a strong female role model, a strong male role model in their life. So.
All right. Rana Otala, a parent advocate, is asking, what about parent advisory councils? Parent involvement is much needed, including diverse parents. Yes, I agree. So, you know, I'm 30 whatever days out from findings, but sneak preview, councils for those things will be included in recommendations moving forward. And I actually think that you will see it addressed in some of the newer structures within the organization to put some emphasis on engagement and community partnerships.
All
All right, could you explain why the state added the growth index to its measurement of school accountability and how that growth index is calculated?
Okay, so now I'm getting in the weeds only because I was asked to, all right? So systems are rated and given performance scores, and they should be. I mean, we should know as taxpayers, we should know as parents how our schools are performing. Now, we can argue about what that should look like and how that rating system should be, and I have thoughts there too, but we have it. And so for so long, up until now, each student would earn their, I'm going to do the best that I can here to not go wonky. Students would earn a score for their school. And that was basically status. So in other words, the kid came in, the kid tested, he earned a score, it was awarded to that school, and all those points came in over here into a big pot, and it, listed out a school score. All right. The change is now in the formula, I think it's 25%, students will be measured in part by their growth. So you'll have a part of how did they do? Did they meet the expectation that was set that they're supposed to be at? That'll be part of the score. But the other part of the score is did they basically grow? How much did they grow academically? Did they grow a year academically or more for a year's worth of teaching, for a year's worth of being in the system? So I very much welcome this. I very much think that if the growth number is 25, it should probably be 50. So probably for me, if I were designing that, half of it would probably be growth and half of it would be status. And here's the benefit. So if you're in a high-need school, say you've got 90% of your kids coming to you not kindergarten ready, and you get an SPS, and that SPS is based on a status number of did your kids hit this mark, your number may be or is now a 40, a 50, a 60, whatever that is. I don't know, just using an example. But now, if teachers and schools and districts are doing their work correctly, and even a student who is coming to you so far behind, if you grow that child a year, or whatever that growth looks like, it doesn't matter how far behind they were. It only matters, did they grow a year for being with you? And so I think that for a long time, some schools scored well because they had more affluent populations, and so A-rated schools so often are schools with more affluent populations. Okay, the lower performing schools, and this is not everyone, but typically, I mean, if you looked at a pattern, the lower performing schools are typically your lower socioeconomic schools. Those schools may be doing great work to grow kids, but they're still not at that level. So the new system, the new formula I'm excited about, I personally wish it was more in the growth piece because it incentivizes schools that are working with the most challenged populations that they're not going to be punished in a grade because their kids still aren't where these other kids are. They're going to be rewarded because, hey, we grew the kid a year. We did our job, and that's reflected in the score. So I think that's welcome. If I'm a principal of a school that has a challenged population, if I'm a teacher working in that kind of school with those types of kids, I'm excited about that.
Member of the audience says research has proven that smaller class size leads to higher performance. How are you going to address the grossly overloaded classes, especially in middle school?
Yeah. Where's the teacher that put that in? All right. That's always a tricky one because, and you get that. God, I've gotten that question for a decade now. But there has to be a balance, and I don't know what that sweet spot is. I don't think 35 kids in a classroom is the right number. I don't think 15 kids in the classroom is the most efficient number. But somewhere in there is a sweet spot. Some number in there is too much. From an equity standpoint, I think those ratios need to be lower in our most challenged schools. I think probably in middle schools as well. Some classes can hold more kids. I think a big piece of that too is are we training teachers? Are we giving them the supports they need to be successful? So, I'm not going to stand here and say that the number is 26 or 24. I'm going to say the number is not 35. the number's not 34. I taught 33 seniors in English one time, and by March, I was tired of them and they were tired of me. So I'm pretty sure that 33 is not the right number for seniors, but somewhere south of that, I think, is the right number. And I certainly want to look at that, because I was joking about what teacher said that, because because I know probably it was a teacher, but we need to look at it.
Tony Legge of the Jefferson Business Council asks, do you see a pathway to implementation of a program that would ensure delivery of quality early child care and learning in Jefferson Parish?
Yeah, that's a complicated question, Tony, just because I don't think it's totally our responsibility as pre-K-12, but I think we have to be at the table in that conversation, and it may be that we have to facilitate that conversation. I see Jed back there. I know he's very interested in that conversation as well. I think Act 3 helped with that, to pull people together, force that collaboration a little bit. Whenever they get to us, I think that we have to make sure that we have expectation when they get to us, both for the kid, both for the teachers. Again, I would just say that's real complicated, because so much of the challenge right now is before they get to us. Some good work is happening, though, around that, and that's building momentum in the state, and you're aware of that. And so that's one of the reasons why I keep talking about it, is just because I think the more I use my platform, whatever that might be, to talk about it, that might help with some of that momentum. So that's why I keep talking about it. But I know some people are working on that. I want to be part of that. But I want to make sure when they come to us, for sure, we're absolutely ready for them to be there, and we know what we're trying to accomplish when they get to us in pre-K or kindergarten. That's not a good answer, I understand. That's an F answer, but it's where I am.
A member of the audience asks, what is the district plan for non-documented students who are afraid to report violations, bullying, or mistreatment at Jefferson Parish Public Schools? Safe hotline for native language, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. I actually had that conversation the other day, just trying to get a better sense of enrollment and how we're processing that. And so I would say that not just with the documentation issue, but with any issue, I think that kids and employees and everyone, we need to figure out what's a safe pathway for reporting. Whether it's bullying, whether it's a financial problem. You know, there's a big thing in Jefferson around this retaliation word. You know, I don't know that I've heard, there's two words I don't know that I've ever heard as much in my life than since I've been in Jefferson: retaliation and autonomy. And I've heard those words more in 67 days than I have in 4 decades. And so, yeah, I think that that's true, that we have to do something with some type of safe way for people to report issues. Yeah, and I'll commit to that.
In this time of violence in schools, what is your plan to enhance safety in schools and protect children and teachers?
Yeah. Since being a principal, I didn't realize this until I was a principal. It was like the first morning I was a principal, I got up and I'm like, holy smokes, I've got to take care of these kids. I didn't really think of it as much as a teacher. I don't know why. Maybe it was just, I don't know. But as a principal, I really got up every morning a little bit like nervous, because parents aren't sending you their bad kids and keeping the good ones at home. You know, they're sending you everything that they have. And I was just always really aware of my responsibility in that. And nothing has changed in that. So I always make a point, and Ted's over here on our communications team, and he's always quoting, wanting to make sure he gets the quote right. But the quote is, the safety of our students and employees is our top responsibility as a system. You know, we have single point of entry. I applaud the board for doing that through fencing. I know that that's not always convenient. I've told people before, I'm like, look, I can tell you with a 99.9% accuracy that I can make sure your child is safe every single day when they come to school from an outside source. But it's going to take 2 hours to get them in and 2 hours to get them out of school every day because of the searching and things that we have to do. So we have to find a balance there. I am a believer. I'm sorry. It's just where it is. I believe in having a police presence in our high schools. I think it's a deterrent to crime. Simultaneously, though, I'm not talking about police state. I'm talking about community policing, where students feel comfortable having conversations with police. I'm also in favor of having avenues where police can come in and talk to students. Like, have you ever thought just about the fact that a kid gets his license and he never has a conversation with anyone about what to do if the policeman pulls me over? And then, so the child gets pulled over for the first time. It's a heightened sense of adrenaline and emotion and all this, and there could be a gun, there could be a knife, I don't know. The kid doesn't know what to do when the policeman walks up. And that's just one example. So we need to make sure that we're having these conversations with children along the way. I think we also have to make sure that we're initiating some program. I was starting to do this in my previous work, like a speak up program, encouraging kids to speak up. There has seldom been a school shooting in America where someone hasn't known something was up prior to that shooting and did not say anything. And so I want to encourage as much as possible. If we need to do that formally, we can do that, and we probably will. But we need some type of speak up initiative where kids feel safe to share out that something's up, something's not right. And you know, this has worked so many times, guys. Like as a superintendent, more than anything, I can tell you there have been occasion when we have received word of information from a kid that something was not right. We went to check that out. The kid was right, and it prevented something bad possibly from happening. And that's been the case in Jefferson, 67 days. You know, we've done that a couple of times. Our teachers and our kids have done the right thing. You know, and so what gets reported on the news? Oh, there was a gun here, there was a knife here. Well, you know what? We found out about the gun and the knife. How about that? You know, how about the fact that we did that right? We live in a scary, crazy, dangerous time, people. And we've got to hit this from all sides to make sure our kids are safe.
Okay. We hear a lot about teacher shortages these days. Is there a real teacher shortage in Jefferson Parish? And if so, is it across the board or limited to certain areas, subjects, grade levels? Do you think attracting people to the teaching profession and keeping them there is becoming more difficult?
Absolutely. And I would say yes, there are some key areas. I led, in my work as president of the state association, I led work with districts to get out resolutions calling for action to this issue. There are not shortages in every content, every grade level. But if you look, I'm talking nationwide, but if you look high school math and science, if you look at special education, these are areas where there are shortages. Guys, I'll tell you that only 2% of America's teaching force are African American male. We've got, 50% of our kids that are African American. If you take half, 25% of our kids are African American male, and we have 2% of our teachers. The same is true for Hispanic. We've got to figure that out. And I think salary schedules can help, but we've got to figure that out. And those issues, math, science, special education, African American male, Hispanic, those are across the board in this nation. I think Jefferson, I know Jefferson has those issues, but we also have some other issues geographically with schools. Geography can play into this as well. And all of these things have to be reflected in some type of compensation package that I just say has to make better sense.
The audience has so many more questions, but I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for speaking today, Dr. Brumley.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Yeah.
Thanks again to Iberia Bank for its generous sponsorship of this breakfast briefing, and thanks to all of you for being with us today. We hope this event has been informative, and we hope to see you again at future BGR events. Have a great day.